It is 3 o'clock, so I am gonna get started. Welcome all to our last office hour of, sorry, I keep looking over there because that's where I have the people. The last office hour of the 24-25 school year. We are going to talk about discipline and manifestation determination. Always a fun topic. And my slides won't move. There we go. So this is our team. I am Jennifer Gleason. Before I joined the team 4 years ago, I was a special education teacher and an ed tech before that. And Colette is here with us today. I think she's frozen though. All right, so let's move on. Carly's here.
Hi, everybody. I am Carly Thibodeau, and I have been with this team for just about 3 years. And before that, I was a teacher for 21 years.
And we have our Wrangler extraordinaire, Julie Pelletier.
Hi, I'm Julie Pelletier. I am the admin support for the monitoring team. I have been with DOE I'm going into my 8th year. And before that, I was admin support for a K-5 elementary school for 16 years.
Thanks, Julie. And hopefully, Colette's coming back in the waiting room, but I will spare her. I'll spare her. All right. So we're going to talk about federal regulations and reporting. We'll talk about disciplinary removals, obviously. We're going to talk about informal removals and in-school suspensions a little bit, and then manifestation determination. So federal regulations. So IDEA is how we get our money for special education, the little bit that the federal government provides. That money comes to the state, and then the state distributes to the SAUs through a grant. And in order to get this money, we have to follow IDEA. So our job is to travel around the state, which is where Ashley is right now, and make sure that you're compliant with IDEA so that we can get our money. The state, every February 1st, has to send a report to the federal government, and we report the state's level of compliance with 18 indicators. And one of those indicators is indicator 4, and it has 2 parts, A and B. And for A is percentage of LEAs, which is you guys, SAUs, with significant discrepancy. And that means that more special education students are being suspended for more than 10 days compared to the state's rate. And then for B is by race, ethnicity. If you ever get flagged with one of these, we will reach out. We'll want to look at some files, and we will determine if there is non-compliance or not. Usually, sometimes there is. Usually it's not. But you want to make sure that when we come, if you happen to get flagged in one of these and we come to look, you want to make sure that your paperwork is following IDEA. So remember, if it's not in the written notice, it didn't happen. A lot of times what we see is these things are happening that are supposed to happen. There's just no documentation that it happened. So make sure it goes in the written notice. All right, disciplinary removals. The regulations on disciplinary removals are very confusing. There's a lot of do this, accept this, and accept maybe. There's a lot of that going on. So we'll start with the basics. IDEA is the federal law. State regulations, MUSER, can go beyond the scope of IDEA. So we are going to talk about MUSER because that's what applies to Maine. So here we are. Each of the slides does have the citation to Muser, so you can do some light bedtime reading if you'd like. All right, and this also, sorry for the little detour there, the disciplinary removal statute that applies to all students, including general ed students, absolutely applies to special education students as well, but we aren't going to talk about that. What we're talking about is what's in the special education regulations. So the up to 5th grade can't be removed thing, that applies to all students. So we're just talking about the special education regulations that go beyond the general ed regulations for students who have IEPs. All right, so a child may be removed for not more than 10 consecutive days, and they may be removed for additional incidents, not more than 10 days. After the child has been removed from current placement for 10 school days, this is cumulative 10 school days, not consecutive, services must be provided starting on day 11. So you have to keep track of your days, right? If you're getting suspended for 1 day here, 3 days here, 5 days here, you have to really keep track. And on day 11, they need to get services. So you have to have that in place. Those services must enable the child to continue to participate in the gen ed curriculum and make progress in their IEP goals. And when determining the extent of the services that are going to be provided, at least one of the child's teachers needs to be consulted. One of the little kind of except for this, if your SAU provides services to all children every time they're removed, then you have to do that same thing for special education students. So special education students are general education students first, so that has to apply. All right. Now here's where it gets really confusing. Change in placement. So a change in placement is if the removal is for more than 10 consecutive school days, which we just said you can't do, right? You said up to 10 days. So there's that. Or it's a series of removals that constitute a pattern. So a pattern, they've been removed for a total of more than 10 days. The behavior is substantially similar in each incident. And you can consider additional factors, length of each removal, the amount of time they've been removed, or proximity of the removals to one another. So this is an important kind of moment in time when a removal constitutes a change in placement. Sometimes it's hard to tell, is the behavior substantially similar? It's a decision, right? It's a decision point, and there are things you have to do in that moment. So the decision really has to be made that day. So we'll talk about this on this slide. So the date on which the decision is made to make a removal that constitutes a change in placement, right? So you have to do something that day. So you have to decide, does this removal constitute a change of placement? Is the behavior similar? All of those things. The SAU must notify the parent and provide the procedural safeguards. So I have this timeline we're going to add to as we go. So a student was out 1 day for swearing, 5 days for swearing and aggression. And now on October 29th, the decision was made. The student's going to be out 10 days for swearing and fighting. So the behaviors are similar. So on October 29th, the decision was made to remove the student, and that removal constitutes a change in placement. So on that day, we're notifying the parents, and we're giving them the procedural safeguards. On November 4th, which is day 11, school day 11, that they will be removed because we're counting those 6 previous, that's when services have to be provided. And this is regardless of anything else, regardless of whether it constitutes a change in placement, whether it's a manifestation or not, doesn't matter. Day 11 services are provided. So we're going to come back to this timeline and add some things. Special circumstances. This is one of those, all of this except this. A student may be removed to an interim alternate education setting for not more than 45 school days without a manifestation determination for 3 things: weapon, illegal drugs, or serious bodily injury. Neither does not, or IDEA even doesn't define those things, but there are definitions in other federal statutes that hearing officers have applied. So serious bodily injury, substantial risk of death, extreme physical pain, protracted and obvious disfigurement, protracted loss or impairment of the function of a bodily member, organ, or mental faculty. So that's serious bodily injury. Dangerous weapon is pretty much anything except a pocket knife with a blade of less than 2.5 inches. So really anything can be a dangerous weapon. All right, quick check-in. We all good? Do we have any questions?
I actually have a quick question. Do you
Perfect.
we should be doing a written notice to document that we've sent those procedural safeguards once the student has been removed at that beginning of your timeline, if we haven't MD or any of that yet?
That's a good idea. You have to document it somehow,
Yeah,
right? You want to make sure you have documentation. I love the idea of doing a written notice.
Perfect. I think that's our safest bet then. Thank you.
That's a really good question. I haven't had that question before, so thank you for that. All right, I'm going to keep rolling. Informal removals and in-school suspension. So, OSEP, which is the Office of Special Education Programs, which is part of the Federal Department of Education, issued a memo, a long memo in 2022, that talked about discipline. So here's the kind of the definition. Administratively shortened school days occur when a child's school day is reduced by school personnel rather than the IEP team, right? In response to a child's behavior. So this is a school removal. Whether you call it a suspension or not, it's a school removal. Those informal removals are not a thing. Everything counts toward those 10 days. It says it right here, right? The calculation of 10 school days could include exclusions that take place outside of IDEA's discipline provisions, which occur because of a child behavior. So any time their day is shortened, that's a removal. And we have some recent case law that speaks to that. This is from last July. And there was a school district that did some of these. They documented disciplinary removals, right, as any school does. But there were some times that the student was removed from class for portions of the school day, and they didn't have documentation of the informal removals. So they lost that case because of that. So you have to count all of that in those 10 days. In-school suspension, it may or may not count in the 10 days. It will count unless the child can participate in the gen ed curriculum and they receive the services on their IEP and they participate with non-disabled peers to the extent they would have normally. So if you have a student on an in-school suspension and all of these things apply, it does not count toward those 10 days. And I would document this very clearly, because if we have to review it and we just see in-school suspension, we have to count that. So I would document this very clearly. All right, questions on informal removals or in-school suspension?
I got a question. Based on what you say here, that's not an in-school suspension. So, I mean, so how does that fit on not counting it as a suspension because they're pulled out of the regular classroom? I mean, we provide the special ed services during in-school suspension and we'll have teachers check in, but we don't have the kids participate in the classrooms. Otherwise, it's not really a suspension.
It's not a suspension. Yeah, I hear that. So
Okay.
you need to count those days is what it comes down to. Count those days in the 10. And that's when you're counting the days to provide services on the 11th day, which is all students, or counting the days to determine if it's a change of placement. Those would count.
Jennifer, that last part about number 3, is it fair to say that if you're not just placing them in a special ed room, that might count? Sorry, that's my niece in the background. Do you, that would, so like we used to have at Oceanside, we had an in-school suspension room. We would bring the kids their work, they would get their curriculum, our special ed teachers would go in, but they were not like in the general ed setting, but they also were not in a special ed setting. So they would have been with any other peers that were in there. Does that sound like that meets number 3?
I think you have to think about how much they're participating with non-disabled children. I mean, if it might be all day, right? If other
Right.
kids are in there. I think that would have to be your call.
Okay.
And think about it in terms of, and I hate to say this, and I'm sorry for this, but what would a hearing officer say? How would a hearing
Exactly.
officer interpret this?
Okay. Thank you. That helps a lot.
Oh, I feel like that was a non-answer, so I appreciate that.
No, it helps a lot because if I put my that hearing officer hat on,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Manifestation determination review. So within 10 days, and remember, Muser specifies school days sometimes and calendar days sometimes. If Muser just says 10 days, it's calendar days. That's what the default is. So within 10 calendar days of the removal that results in the change of placement, the IEP team must hold a manifestation determination meeting. So going back to our timeline, it would be November 7th because we're 10 calendar days from October 29th when that decision was made. It has to be before November 7th. So within 10 days of that decision, you're going to have that manifestation determination. So what are you going to do at that meeting? You're going to review all of the information in the student's file. You're going to determine if that conduct was caused by or had a direct and substantial relationship to the child's disability, or was the direct result of the SAU's failure to implement the IEP. If it was a failure to implement, the SAU has to fix that and remedy those deficiencies. So what constitutes implementing the IEP? It's not just the special education teacher that implements the IEP, right? If the student has a behavior plan, everybody the student interacts with has to implement that behavior plan, right? Accommodations, any of that. So it is up to the SAU to ensure that all of those people have access to the IEP. And each teacher or provider is informed of what their responsibilities are, as well as any accommodations, modifications, and supports that need to be provided to the child. So you want to make sure everybody is implementing that IEP.
So I'm going to tag into, again, sorry, apologies.
Yep. No, we like that.
The other day I had a 17-year-old student explain to us all the ways we did not meet her IEP. And it was all general ed stuff that we did not know that was happening. So I just want the team to know, when you have the older students, it is really, really essential to reach out to them and find out what they're seeing as well. And some of it was just misunderstandings, and some of it was flat out people were not doing it. So
Wow.
just letting you know. So we had to change originally we're like, oh yeah, we're absolutely meeting the IEP. And she was like, no, not really. And then told us. So there you go.
That kid is going to go places.
She is, and she's done a great job. So it was actually really great to see her advocate for herself that way.
Absolutely. I kind of love that. All right. If the team determines that it's not a manifestation of the disability, you still need to provide services. You always need to provide services starting on day 11. And the child must receive, if it's appropriate, functional behavior assessment and behavior plan that are designed to address the behavior violations so that it does not recur. So even if it's not a manifestation, you still have some responsibility to look at the behavior and why it's happening. If it is determined to be a manifestation, you must conduct an FBA and implement a behavior plan. If there already is a behavior plan, it must be reviewed and modified as necessary to address this behavior. And the child must be returned to their placement, unless the parent and SAU agree to a change of placement. So when we're talking about all these things, don't forget, if it's not in the written notice, it didn't happen. And again, we run into that quite a bit. You're doing it, you're just not documenting it. I made this little cheat sheet. It's not, sorry, word find. Doesn't have everything in it. I wouldn't really count on it, but it's kind of a little visual support to help with all of the winding roads of discipline. Okay, this is about if the team decides that the behavior was not a manifestation of the disability and the parent disagrees with that, they can request a hearing, due process hearing. And in this specific case, any due process request will be on an expedited schedule. So the hearing will occur within 20 school days, and then the hearing officer has to make their determination within 10 school days after that. So it's a quick turnaround in this situation. Now the really weird stuff. All right. The child's not a special education student, but the school had knowledge that the child was a child with a disability before the behavior occurred. What is knowledge? The parent expressed a concern in writing that the child needs special education. The parents requested an evaluation, or school staff expressed specific concerns about a pattern of behavior. So in these cases, the school knows that the child is a child with a disability, and that child can assert any of these protections of MUSER. Except, there's always an exception. If the parent didn't allow an evaluation, refused services, or the child was evaluated and found not eligible. So if you kind of went through the process with the child, then you don't have to worry about that. They don't get these protections. What if the child is removed and the parents request an evaluation? They say, oh, he shouldn't be removed because he has this disability. They are not eligible for these protections, but you have to do that evaluation right away in an expedited manner. And the child remains where they are until the process is complete. If you go through the process and find them eligible, then bam, you throw right into the MUSER protections for the student. So a lot of exceptions, a lot of, you know, if this. So it is really confusing. Any other questions?
Do you have a like determination checklist on the DOE website that could be printed off?
I don't believe there is an official form, but I know that there are some unofficial forms floating around the state. So I would ask other SAUs if they have them. You guys have good questions. You have questions that I haven't had before, so this is kind of cool, making it interesting. All right, resources. Carly put the link to this PowerPoint in the chat, and the links within the PowerPoint are accessible through the PDF. So procedural manual is your detailed manual for all required forms. MUSER, so you could look up all the things we just talked about, because that's fun. IEP quick reference document. We have one of these for all of the forms on our website, color-coded, compliance and best practice. So super cool. Professional development calendar. That second link is for all of our recordings. We record all of these office hours, all of the trainings we do, and we put them up on the website. Resources, that third link, we have all kinds of cool things there. One of the things we have is, we used to call them fun facts, and now they're called, I think, information sheets. We have one on discipline and manifestation determination. So it's kind of a one-pager summary. So that might be handy. These are recordings of some of our past PD. We're a little behind. It's probably me. So today is our last one. So all of the recordings for the year should be up soon. This link will get you to our feedback and contact hour form. And Carly just put that in the chat as well, because she's awesome, except she made a face. So I don't know, maybe it's not the right one.
It is, but I need to put in today's training. I always forget to do that. So I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
It should be there in just
Give Carly a minute before you fill it out. We appreciate your feedback. We do adjust our training because we want it to be helpful for you. And also put in your email and select today's training, which I think you'll have the date on there. Is that right, Carly? By date? The date will be there, so select that, and Carly will send you contact hour for hanging out with us today. This is how you get to Maine DOE Online in the This is our contact information. Any questions, we're all teachers. We do monitoring and support, and I'll tell you we enjoy support more than monitoring. So absolutely reach out with any questions you have to any one of us. Let me go back to that one. And that is it, unless there are any more questions.
Jennifer, I have a question. There's so much talk and so much emphasis about the written notice and the accuracy of that. And I hear that in every professional development, so it really hits home. What is the most effective best practice or course of action for a parent if they believe that the written notice is not an accurate reflection of that meeting? And of course, those become particularly sticky in terms of manifestation, determination, and so forth. Is it better for that parent to submit their rewrite, their edit, their additions, their corrections? I've seen that where the director or whomever might incorporate that. I've also seen it where there's just been an attachment. They say just submit the whole thing and we'll attach it to the file. But does that attachment have the weight? Is there then the need for an IEP meeting to discuss the disagreement and what should be an accurate reflection if that goes to due process?
That is a very interesting question. And I think that my answer is going to be that would be based on your SAU policies and procedures.
So it differs.
Anybody else on the team has a
district to district?
I think so. I don't think there's any kind of thing in the regulations.
In our district, in Rockland, what we do if we have a parent that calls and says they don't agree with something that's been put in, we do work as a team to try to alter that and make that something that they find acceptable. And we do miss stuff, so we are always acknowledging that practice. But we also say in our meetings, if we've missed anything, please make sure to let us know. So I think we kind of make it an open sort of like, this is a document that we want to make sure that we get right. And then we've had parents at a second meeting, like if we're doing 20 days, say, well, you didn't reflect this properly in the last one. And we always put that in section 5 to say the parent has said that they felt we missed this in the last written notice. We want to give it like prominence. So that's how we do it.
Great, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Terry. All right.
I have one
Yes.
quick question.
Okay.
Is this what our summer is going to look like? Is today an accurate representation of what our summer is going to be? Beautiful, sunny, 70 degrees,
Let's
Maine.
fingers crossed.
Mhm.
Fingers crossed. I heard the Old Farmer's Almanac said hot and rainy for the summer, but you never know in Maine. You just never know.
No kidding.
All righty. Thank you all very much for coming and have a great end of the school year and a wonderful summer.